My name is Darrell, and I am 59 years old. I was standing in my own living room when my son looked me dead in the eyes and said those words. From now on, your paycheck goes into my account. You do not need anything anyway. I raised that boy. I gave him everything. And there he was, treating me like I was already gone. That night, he and his wife planned to come back for what they called my allowance. But they had no idea what was waiting for them. Have you ever been treated like you no longer matter by someone you raised? Tell me your story in the comments below. And please, before we continue, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. What happened next changed everything in ways none of us expected. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, back when the auto industry was the heartbeat of this city. My father worked at a stamping plant for 32 years. My mother cleaned houses on the east side until her knees gave out. We never had much, but we had enough. We had dinner together every night. We had respect for each other. We had love that did not come with conditions. I started working at the Ford assembly plant right out of high school, 19 years old, with grease under my fingernails and a dream of something better. I did not go to college, could not afford it. But I learned everything I could on that factory floor. I learned how to work with my hands. I learned how to solve problems. I learned that showing up every single day, even when you did not feel like it was the only way to build something real. 15 years I spent moving up. Started as a line worker, then became a team leader, then a shift supervisor. By the time I was 35, I was running a whole section of the plant. 53 men and women reporting to me. I was proud of that. Not because of the title, but because I earned it. Every promotion came from hard work, not handouts. That was the only way I knew how to live. Then I met Margaret. It was the summer of 1989. The company threw one of those big picnics out at Belle Isle Park. Hot dogs, hamburgers, kids running around, music playing from somebody's boombox. I was standing by the cooler getting myself a cola when I saw her. She was wearing a yellow sundress, and her hair was pulled back in a way that showed off her smile. She was talking to one of the secretaries from the front office, laughing at something, and I swear I forgot how to breathe for a second. Her name was Margaret. She was 22 years old, working as a nurse at Henry Ford Hospital. One of her friends from nursing school was married to a guy in the paint department, and that was how she ended up at the picnic. She told me later that she noticed me too. Said I looked like a man who knew how to work hard, but did not know how to have fun. She was probably right. We talked for 3 hours that day. About everything. About nothing. About the kind of life we wanted to build. She was not impressed by money or flashy things. She told me she grew up in a small town outside of Lansing, and her parents were simple people. Teachers, both of them. She valued kindness over success. She valued honesty over charm, and for some reason I still do not understand, she valued me. We got married the next year, 1990, at a little church on the west side. Her parents came up from Lansing. My parents cried the whole ceremony. We had maybe 60 people there, and the reception was in the church basement with homemade food and a cake Margaret's aunt baked herself. It was not fancy. It was perfect. We bought a small house in the suburbs. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a garage that leaked when it rained. I fixed that leak myself, spent a whole weekend on the roof. Margaret planted flowers in the front yard, tulips and daffodils that came back every spring. We were happy. Really happy. The kind of happy that does not need to shout about itself. Brandon came first, born in the fall of 1991. I remember holding him in the hospital, this tiny little person with Margaret's nose and my stubborn chin. I made a promise to that baby right then. I told him I would give him everything I never had. I would make sure he never had to struggle the way I did. I would protect him from the hard parts of life. Maybe that was my first mistake. 3 years later, Megan was born. She was different from her brother from the very beginning. Quieter, more observant. She would sit in her high chair and watch everything, taking it all in. Brandon was always louder, always demanding attention, always wanting more. When he was 5, he threw a tantrum in the toy store because I would not buy him a third action figure. Megan, at the same age, would have been grateful for one. Margaret noticed the difference too. She worried about Brandon, said he had a greedy heart. I told her he was just a boy, that he would grow out of it. She would look at me with those knowing eyes and say nothing. She was always smarter than me about people. I just did not want to see it. As the kids grew up, the differences became more obvious. Megan worked hard in school, got good grades, helped around the house without being asked. She became a teacher just like Margaret's parents, married a good man named Stephen, and moved to Columbus. She calls me every Sunday without fail. Brandon was different. He scraped by in school, never applied himself, always had an excuse for why things did not work out. He got a job selling insurance after bouncing around for a few years. Married a woman named Nicole, who liked expensive things and did not like to work for them. They had 2 kids, Tyler and Emma, my grandchildren. I love those kids more than I can say. When Brandon was 16, Margaret caught him stealing money from her purse. $40. She confronted him, and he lied straight to her face, said he did not take it. When she showed him the receipt from the video game store, he finally admitted it. Margaret wanted to punish him severely. I talked her down, said it was just a phase. He will grow out of it. He never did. The year 2019 changed everything. Margaret went in for a routine mammogram, and they found something. Breast cancer. Stage 3. The doctor said it with such clinical detachment, like he was reading a weather report, partly cloudy with a chance of devastation. She fought hard. 18 months of chemotherapy radiation surgeries. I took a leave from the plant to be with her. Megan drove up from Columbus as often as she could, sometimes staying for weeks at a time. She would sit by her mother's bed, reading to her, holding her hand, making her laugh when laughing seemed impossible. Brandon came twice. Once at the beginning, when he thought she might leave him something in her will. Once at the end, when Megan called and said it was time. He did not stay long either time. Said work was busy. Said the kids needed him. Said he would come back when things settled down. Things never settled down. Margaret died in June of 2021. 54 years old. 31 years of marriage. And just like that, she was gone. At the funeral, Brandon asked me about her jewelry, not about her final words, not about what she wanted for her memorial. He asked about the diamond earrings I gave her for our 20th anniversary. I told him his sister would get them because Megan was there when it mattered. He did not speak to me for 3 weeks after that. I retired in 2023. 38 years at that plant. They gave me a plaque and a handshake and a pension of $3,200 a month. It was enough to live on, more than enough, for a man alone in a paid-off house. I thought I would have peace in my final years. I thought the hard parts were over. I was wrong. Brandon came to see me on a Saturday afternoon about 6 months after I retired. He brought Nicole with him, which should have been my first warning sign. Nicole only came when they wanted something. My son was 34 years old by then. He had put on weight since his 20s, and there were dark circles under his eyes that never seemed to go away. He worked in insurance sales, but he never seemed to make much money. Always talking about the next big commission that was just around the corner. Always buying things he could not afford to impress people he did not even like. Nicole was 31, pretty in a hard way, like a photograph that had been retouched too many times. She worked at some office downtown, answering phones and filing papers. She complained about that job constantly, but never looked for anything better. What she really wanted, I think, was to not work at all. They had 2 children together. Tyler was 7, a sweet boy with his grandmother's eyes. Emma was 5, shy and quiet, always hiding behind her mother's legs when they visited. I loved those grandchildren. I sent them birthday cards with money tucked inside. I bought them Christmas presents. I tried to be the grandfather they deserved, even when their father made it difficult. That Saturday, Brandon did not bother with small talk. He sat down on my couch, Nicole beside him, and got right to business. "Dad, we need to talk about your finances," he said. "What about them?" I asked. Nicole leaned forward. "We have been doing some thinking. You are here all alone in this big house. You do not go anywhere. You do not do anything. What do you need all that pension money for?" I felt a coldness spread through my chest. "What are you suggesting?" Brandon cleared his throat. "From now on, I want your paycheck sent to my account. We will give you an allowance for groceries and bills. But we need the rest. We have 2 kids to raise. We have expenses you cannot imagine." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. There was not one. "You want me to hand over my pension," I said slowly. "The money I worked 38 years for." "You want me to give it to you?" Nicole jumped in. "It makes more sense this way. You do not travel. You do not have hobbies. You just sit here watching television. What do you need money for?" Brandon nodded. "You do not need anything anyway. That is the bottom line." Those words hit me like a punch to the stomach. You do not need anything anyway, like I was already dead, like I was just taking up space, using resources that belonged to someone else. My own son looked at me and saw nothing but a source of income to be exploited. I thought about all the things I had given him over the years. The car I bought him when he graduated high school, the down payment on his first apartment, the wedding I paid for when he married Nicole, the furniture, the appliances, the loans that were never repaid. I had been generous my whole life, and this was what it got me. "Are you serious, son?" I managed to say. Brandon did not flinch. "Dead serious. We will come back tonight to set everything up. I will bring the bank forms." They left without saying goodbye, just walked out the door like they had already won, like it was already decided. I sat in my living room for a long time after that. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, the one Margaret had picked out at a flea market 20 years ago. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears like a warning drum. I thought about Margaret. What would she say if she could see this? She always warned me about Brandon. "Be careful with that boy," she used to say. "He has a selfish heart. He does not love people. He loves what they can give him." I never listened. I always made excuses. He is going through a hard time. He will grow out of it. He just needs a little more help. But there was no excuse for this. My own son wanted to take control of my money and give me an allowance like I was a child, like I had not earned every single cent of that pension with my own 2 hands. I picked up the phone and called Megan. She answered on the second ring. "Dad, what is wrong?" I told her everything. What Brandon had said, what Nicole had implied, the deadline they had given me. I heard her gasp, heard her voice tremble with anger. "Dad, I told you," she said. "I have been telling you for years. Brandon only sees you as an ATM. He does not care about you. He cares about your money." I know, I admitted. I should have listened. What are you going to do? I do not know yet. But I am not giving him my pension. That much I know for sure. "Good," she said. "Do not let him bully you, and Dad. Call Mr. Henderson tomorrow." The lawyer. "You need to know exactly where you stand legally." I promised her I would. We talked for another hour, and by the time I hung up, I felt a little stronger, a little clearer. My daughter was on my side. Margaret would have been proud of her. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about all the years I had wasted trying to fix something that was never going to be fixed. Brandon was not going through a phase. This was who he was. This was who he had always been. And I had finally run out of excuses. The next morning was Sunday. Brandon called at 8:00 before I had even finished my coffee. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 8:30, again at 9. Each time his voice got more impatient. "Dad, pick up. We need to finalize this today." "Dad, I do not have time for games. Call me back." "Dad, Nicole and I are coming over this afternoon. Have the paperwork ready." I deleted every message without responding. Then I called Mr. Henderson. Harold Henderson had been Margaret's family lawyer for decades. He handled her parents' estate when they passed. He drew up our wills. He knew our family better than almost anyone. He was 65 years old, sharp as a tack, and he did not suffer fools gladly. I explained the situation as clearly as I could. Brandon demanding my pension, the ultimatum, the deadline of tonight. Mr. Henderson listened without interrupting, then asked me to come to his office right away. I drove across town in a daze. The city looked different that morning, sharper somehow, like I was seeing it clearly for the first time in years. Mr. Henderson's office was in a small building downtown, the kind of place that smelled like old books and furniture polish. He was waiting for me in the conference room with a stack of files already laid out on the table. "Sit down, Darryl," he said. "We have a lot to discuss." He started with the basics. My pension was my money, legally and completely. Brandon had no claim to it, no matter what he said. Nobody could force me to sign it over. If I wanted to, I could tell him to go to hell, and there was nothing he could do about it. "But that is not why you are here," Mr. Henderson continued. "There is something you need to know about the house." "What house?" I asked. "The one Brandon lives in." I felt my stomach drop. "What about it?" Mr. Henderson opened one of the files and spread out several documents. "6 years ago, you came to me about purchasing a property for your son. 742 Maple Street. You put down $40,000 as a down payment and agreed to pay the mortgage monthly. Do you remember?" Of course I remember. It was supposed to be a gift. I was helping him get started. Mr. Henderson shook his head slowly. "Darryl, you never signed the property over to Brandon. The deed is still in your name. You have been paying that mortgage out of your own pocket for 6 years. Brandon does not own that house. You do." I stared at him. That could not be right. I had intended to transfer the deed. I had planned to do it as soon as Brandon got settled. But then Margaret got sick and everything fell apart, and I just assumed it had been handled at some point. It was never transferred. Mr. Henderson confirmed. Margaret came to me privately about 4 years ago. She asked me to delay the paperwork indefinitely. She said Brandon had not earned it yet. She wanted to wait until he proved himself responsible. Margaret. Even from beyond the grave, she was still protecting me. "There is more," Mr. Henderson said. He pulled out another document. "Margaret had a savings account that you did not know about. She started it when she first got sick. $85,000. She left it all to you with specific instructions that Brandon was never to know about it." I looked at the paper at my wife's signature at the bottom, and I felt tears burning in my eyes. She knew this day would come. She knew Brandon would try something like this, and she had spent her final months making sure I would be protected. "What do I do now?" I asked. Mr. Henderson leaned back in his chair. "You have options. You can sell the house Brandon lives in. You can evict him and his family. Or you can let them stay and charge them rent. It is entirely up to you. I do not want to hurt my grandchildren. Tyler and Emma did not do anything wrong. Then do not sell right away. But Brandon needs to know the truth. He needs to understand that he does not own anything, and he needs to face the consequences of treating his father like a cash register." We spent the next hour going over details. Mr. Henderson printed out copies of the deed, the mortgage payments, Margaret's letter. He gave me everything I would need to prove my case. Then he made me a promise. "I will be available tonight if you need me," he said. "Whatever happens, you are not alone in this." I drove home with my head spinning. Everything I thought I knew had been turned upside down. Brandon did not own his house. I had been supporting him for 6 years without even realizing it. And my son thought he could waltz in and take control of my life like I was nothing. Not anymore. I called Megan from the car. She listened to everything Mr. Henderson had told me, and then she said the words I needed to hear. "I am coming home, Dad. I will be there by dinner. We are going to handle this together." She lived 3 hours away in Columbus, but she dropped everything and got in her car because her father needed her. That is the difference between my 2 children. That has always been the difference. By the time I got home, I had made my decision. I was not going to just tell Brandon the truth. I was going to show him. I was going to make sure he understood exactly what he had done and exactly what he was about to lose. I started packing. For the next 3 hours, I went through my house room by room. I pulled clothes out of closets. I took pictures off walls. I packed boxes with dishes and books and all the little things that made this place a home. I called a moving company and paid extra for same-day service. They arrived at 4 o'clock with a truck and 3 men. By 6 o'clock, my house was empty. Not completely empty. I left a few things behind. A small table in the middle of the living room, a stack of documents, and a letter addressed to my son. Megan arrived just as the moving truck was pulling away. She hugged me tight and looked around at the bare walls. "Dad, what did you do?" "I showed them," I said. "I showed them what it looks like when someone decides they do not need to take it anymore." She smiled, a real smile, the first one I had seen from her in months. "Mom would be so proud of you." I had already found a new place. A 2-bedroom apartment in a nice complex across town. Good security. Quiet neighbors. A balcony where I could drink my coffee and watch the sunrise. It was smaller than the house, but it felt right. It felt like a fresh start. We went to the apartment together and started unpacking. The moving company had done most of the work, but there were still boxes to open, furniture, to arrange, memories to sort through. We worked in comfortable silence, father and daughter, building something new from the ashes of something old. Around 7 o'clock, my phone rang. A number I did not recognize. I answered it anyway. Mr. Darrell. This is Nicole. We are on our way to your house. Brandon wants to know if you have the bank forms ready. I kept my voice calm. I have thought about it. Come at 7:30. We will talk. Nicole sounded pleased. I knew you would see reason. We will be there soon. I hung up and looked at Megan. They are going to the old house. They do not know. Let them find out, she said. Let them see what happens when you push someone too far. Mr. Henderson had offered to be there when Brandon arrived. I told him it was not necessary. This was between me and my son. But I asked him to call Brandon afterward to explain the legal situation, to make it clear that the games were over. The clock on the wall showed 7:25. Somewhere across town, Brandon and Nicole were pulling up to my old house, expecting to find their cash cow waiting obediently, expecting to take control of my life. They were about to get the shock of their lives. I was not there to see their faces, but I can imagine it clearly enough based on what happened afterward. Brandon and Nicole arrived at 7:30 exactly. They parked in the driveway right behind where my car used to sit. Brandon was carrying a folder full of bank documents. Nicole was wearing a nice dress like she was going to a celebration. They thought they had won. They thought this was their moment of triumph. The front door was unlocked. I had left it that way on purpose. Brandon pushed it open and stepped inside, calling out to me. Dad, we are here. He flipped the light switch, and then he stopped moving. The living room was empty. Completely empty. No couch, no television, no armchair where I used to sit and read the paper. The walls were bare, nothing but faded rectangles where pictures used to hang. The carpet showed imprints where furniture had stood for years. Everything was gone. Nicole screamed, a high-pitched shriek that probably echoed through the whole neighborhood. What the hell? Where is everything? Brandon stood, frozen in the doorway, his folder of bank documents hanging limp at his side. He could not process what he was seeing. His father's house, the house he had grown up in, the house he had taken for granted his entire life, was suddenly a hollow shell. He ran through the rooms like a man possessed. The kitchen was empty. The cabinets hung open, revealing nothing but dust. The bedrooms were stripped bare. The closets were vacant. Even the garage, where I had kept my tools for 40 years, was completely cleaned out. Where did he go? Nicole kept shouting. The money. Where is the money? Brandon found the table in the living room, the only piece of furniture left behind. On top of it sat a stack of documents and a sealed envelope with his name on it. His hands were shaking when he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written in my handwriting. I had spent an hour on those words, choosing each one carefully. Dear Brandon, you asked for my paycheck because you said I do not need anything. You were right about one thing. I do not need this house anymore. So I left. But there is something you should know. The house you live in, the one on Maple Street, has never been yours. I have been paying the mortgage for 6 years. The deed is still in my name. Your mother knew this. She asked me to keep it that way, because she did not trust you with something so valuable. I am not selling the property. Your children need a home, and I will not punish them for their father's choices. But from now on, you will pay rent. $1,500 a month. That is less than the mortgage payment I have been covering all this time. If you cannot afford that, you have 60 days to find somewhere else to live. I gave you everything, Brandon. Everything I had. You wanted more. Now you will learn what it means to earn something for yourself. Your father, Darryl. Nicole read the letter over Brandon's shoulder. Her face went pale, then red, then a shade of purple I have never seen on a human being before. He owns our house. She was practically spitting the words. That old man owns our house. Brandon could not speak. He just kept staring at the documents beneath the letter. The deed to 742 Maple Street, clearly showing my name as the sole owner. The mortgage statements showing payments coming from my account every single month for 6 years. The legal paperwork Mr. Henderson had prepared, outlining Brandon's options going forward. It was all there. Everything he thought he had was actually mine. Everything he took for granted was never really his to begin with. His phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. He answered it anyway. Mr. Brandon. This is Harold Henderson, your father's attorney. Brandon's voice came out as a croak. What I am calling to formally inform you that the property at 742 Maple Street is legally owned by your father, Darryl. You have 2 options. Option 1, sign a rental agreement at $1,500 per month. Option 2, vacate the property within 60 days. The choice is yours. Brandon tried to argue. That house was a gift. He cannot do this. My mother wanted us to have it. Mr. Henderson's voice was cool and professional. There is no legal document transferring ownership. Your mother, in fact, specifically requested that the transfer be delayed indefinitely. She believed you had not earned the responsibility of home ownership. Your father has been paying the mortgage out of his own pocket since the day you moved in. He owes you nothing. You cannot be serious. I will send the paperwork to your address tomorrow. You have 2 weeks to respond. Have a good evening, Mr. Brandon. The line went dead. Brandon stared at the phone in his hand like it was a foreign object. Then, with a roar of frustration, he hurled it across the room. It hit the wall and shattered into pieces. Nicole was crying now. Ugly tears, the kind that smear makeup and make voices go high and whiny. This is not fair. This is not fair. He has all that money, and he will not share it with his own family. Brandon did not respond to her. He just stood in the middle of that empty living room, surrounded by the evidence of his own greed, and said nothing at all. They stayed in that house for almost an hour. I know because Mr. Henderson drove by to check on things. He said they were just sitting on the floor, not talking, not moving, like they were waiting for someone to wake them up from a nightmare. Eventually they left, drove back to their house. My house. The house they suddenly realized they had no claim to. I wonder what they talked about on the drive home. I wonder if Brandon felt any shame. I wonder if Nicole started calculating how much $1,500 a month would cut into her shopping budget. I wonder if either of them understood, even for a moment, how badly they had hurt me. The first few days in my new apartment were strange. I would wake up in the morning and forget where I was. I would reach for Margaret on the other side of the bed, and my hand would find empty space. I would start to walk toward the kitchen for coffee, and the route would be wrong, the turns unfamiliar. But slowly, I began to settle in. Megan stayed with me for the first week, helping me arrange furniture and stock the pantry. She cooked dinner every night, recipes her mother used to make, and we ate together at my new table and talked about everything except Brandon. On the 3rd day, my phone started ringing. Brandon's number. I let it go to voicemail. He called again an hour later. Then again. Then Nicole tried. Then Brandon again. The messages started polite. Dad, we need to talk. Please call me back. Then they got more desperate. Dad, this is not funny. You cannot just disappear like this. Then angry. You are being ridiculous. Pick up the phone, then pleading. Dad, please. I am sorry. Just talk to me. I did not respond to any of them. I could not. Not yet. I needed time to process everything that had happened. Time to grieve the relationship I thought I had with my son. Time to accept that the boy I raised had become a man I did not recognize. Megan told me I was doing the right thing. Dad, he needs to understand that actions have consequences. You cannot give him an inch right now, or he will take a mile. I know, I said, but it still hurts. Of course it does. She put her hand on mine. He is your son. You love him. But loving someone does not mean letting them destroy you. She was right. I knew she was right. But knowing something and feeling it are two different things. After a week, Megan had to go back to Columbus, her job, her husband, her life. She hugged me tight at the door and made me promise to call if I needed anything. Anything at all, any time of day or night. I promised, and I meant it. The apartment building had a nice community room on the first floor. I started going down there in the mornings, drinking coffee and reading the paper. Other retirees did the same thing. We would nod to each other, exchange small talk about the weather or the news. Nothing deep, but it was nice to have human contact. There was a woman named Dorothy who lived on the fourth floor. She was 72, a widow like me, with white hair and kind eyes. She told me about her late husband, a firefighter who died in the line of duty 20 years ago. She told me about her 3 children, all successful, all grateful for the sacrifices she made. She told me that being alone was hard, but it was better than being with people who did not appreciate you. I thought about that a lot. Being alone versus being with people who did not appreciate me. For years I had chosen the latter. I had let Brandon treat me like a burden, like an obstacle, like a resource to be exploited. And I had told myself it was okay, because family was family. But family should mean more than that. Family should mean respect. Family should mean gratitude. Family should mean love that goes both ways, not just one. 2 weeks after I moved out, Brandon showed up at my apartment building. The security guard at the front desk called up to let me know. There is a man here, says he is your son. Do you want me to send him up? No, I said. Tell him I am not available. There was a pause. He is pretty upset, sir. Says it is urgent. Tell him I will call when I am ready. Not before. The guard relayed the message. I could hear Brandon's voice in the background, raised and angry. Then the line went dead. I looked out my window and saw him standing in the parking lot, staring up at the building. He stood there for almost 20 minutes before finally getting in his car and driving away. Not this time. This time I was going to wait until I was truly ready. Until he had proven through actions rather than words that he understood what he had done. I called Mr. Henderson and asked about the rental agreement. Brandon had not signed it yet. He had not responded to any of the official communications. The 60-day clock was ticking. What happens if he does not sign? I asked. Then we begin eviction proceedings, Mr. Henderson said. It is not pleasant, but it is straightforward. You own the property. He has no legal right to be there. I do not want to make my grandchildren homeless. I understand. But eventually, you may have to choose between protecting them and protecting yourself. I hung up, feeling sick to my stomach. This was not what I wanted. I never wanted any of this. All I wanted was a peaceful retirement. All I wanted was to be treated with basic dignity by my own son. Was that really too much to ask? The change came slowly, but it came. About 6 weeks after I moved out, Brandon finally signed the rental agreement. Mr. Henderson said he had argued about every single clause, tried to negotiate a lower rate, even threatened to contact other lawyers. But in the end, he had no legal standing. The house was mine. He either paid rent or he left. $1,500 a month, starting the first of the following month. Less than I had been paying on the mortgage, but enough to establish the principal. Brandon was not entitled to my generosity. He had to earn it. Nicole was furious, according to what Megan heard through mutual friends. She blamed Brandon for ruining everything. She blamed me for being cruel and vindictive. She never once blamed herself for sitting on my couch and telling me I did not need anything. Brandon had to start working overtime to afford the rent. No more expensive dinners out. No more designer clothes for Nicole. No more pretending they were wealthier than they actually were. For the first time in his adult life, my son had to live within his means. I heard through Megan that things at their house were tense. A lot of arguing, a lot of slammed doors. Nicole talking about leaving. Brandon sleeping on the couch some nights. About 2 months after everything fell apart, Brandon called me again. But this time, his voice was different. "Dad, can we talk? Please." I hesitated. "What do you want, Brandon?" "I just want to talk. I will come to you, wherever you want. Just please give me a chance." Something in his tone made me pause. He sounded tired, defeated. Not angry, not demanding, not entitled, just tired. "There is a coffee shop on 5th Street, I said. "Do you know it?" "I know it. Meet me there tomorrow at 10. Come alone." "I will." "Dad, thank you. I mean it." I hung up without saying goodbye. I was not ready to forgive him, but I was willing to listen. That was more than he deserved, and we both knew it. The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop early. I ordered a black coffee and sat at a table in the corner where I could watch the door. My heart was beating faster than I expected, faster than it should have been for a man my age. Brandon walked in at exactly 10:00. He looked different, thinner, older. There were more lines on his face than I remembered, and his shoulders slumped like he was carrying a heavy weight. He saw me and made his way over. He did not sit down right away, just stood there, looking at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "Dad," he said, "thank you for coming." I nodded toward the empty chair. "Sit." He sat. His hands were trembling slightly. He clasped them together on the table to make them stop. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," he started, "these past 2 months, about what I said to you, about what I asked you to do, about the kind of person I have been." I waited. He took a deep breath. "I was wrong. I was so wrong, Dad. I treated you like you did not matter. I treated you like an ATM machine instead of my father. And when you stood up for yourself, I was angry at you, like you were the one who did something wrong." "Go on," I said. "Nicole and I have been having problems. Big problems. She wanted to leave after the rent thing started. said I had ruined her life. We almost split up. But then something happened. I had to look in the mirror and really see myself, and I did not like what I saw. He paused, collecting himself. Brandon was never good at emotions. He always covered them up with bluster and demands. Seeing him vulnerable like this was almost unsettling. I talked to Megan, he continued. She told me things Mom said before she died. Things about me that I never wanted to hear. About how I take and never give back. About how I see people as tools instead of human beings. Your mother loved you, I said, but she also saw you clearly. I know. He swallowed hard. I know she did. And she was right. She was always right about me. So what are you going to do about it? He looked at me with something I had rarely seen in his eyes. Humility. I am not asking you for money, he said. I am not asking you to forgive me. I know I have not earned that. I am just asking for a chance to do better, to be the son I should have been all along. I studied his face for a long moment. He seemed sincere. But Brandon had seemed sincere before. He was good at telling people what they wanted to hear. Words are easy, I said finally. Show me. He nodded. I will. I promise, Dad. I will. We talked for another hour. About the past, about the future. About the things we had lost, and the things we might still save. He did not ask me to lower the rent. He did not ask me to give back the house. He just talked and listened, and for the first time in years, we had something resembling a real conversation. When we finally stood up to leave, he did something unexpected. He hugged me. A real hug, tight and desperate, like he was afraid I would disappear. I love you, Dad, he whispered. I am sorry it took me so long to show it. I patted his back awkwardly. I love you too, son. But love without respect is not enough. I know. I know it is not. He pulled away, wiped his eyes, and walked out the door. I watched him go, feeling something I had not felt in a long time. Not forgiveness, not trust, but hope. A small, fragile hope that maybe things could be different. The months that followed were not easy. Brandon paid his rent on time, every single month. He started calling me weekly, just to check in to see how I was doing. He brought Tyler and Emma to visit me at my apartment, and I made pancakes for them on Saturday mornings. Things with Nicole remained rocky. She did not like the new arrangement, did not like having to budget and sacrifice. But Brandon, to his credit, stood firm. He told her that rebuilding his relationship with me was more important than keeping her comfortable. She stayed, but only barely. I kept my distance for a while. I was not ready to fully trust him again. But slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild. Not what we had before, because what we had before was broken. Something new. Something based on boundaries and respect, and the understanding that love is not enough by itself. Mr. Henderson told me I could sell the house whenever I wanted, that I could cut Brandon off completely, take my money and my freedom, and never look back. But I did not want that. I wanted my son to succeed. I wanted my grandchildren to have a stable home. I just needed to make sure that my help did not enable his worst impulses. A year later, Brandon got a promotion at work. His first real promotion in almost a decade. He called me that night, excited, proud, wanting to share the news. I told him I was proud of him too. And I meant it. The house is still in my name. Maybe someday I will transfer it to him, when he has truly proven that he can be trusted. Or maybe I will leave it to him in my will, the way Margaret left her savings to me. Either way, it will be his eventually. But not because he demanded it, because he earned it. That is the difference. That is what he finally understands. I am sitting on my balcony as I finish telling you this story. The sun is setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. There is a cup of coffee beside me, grown cold while I have been talking. There is a photograph of Margaret on the table, the one I took on our honeymoon all those years ago. She is smiling in that picture. She always smiled like she knew a secret, like the world was a puzzle she had already solved. I miss her every single day. But I know she would be proud of what I did. She would be proud that I finally stood up for myself. Brandon said I did not need anything. He was wrong. I need respect. I need dignity. I need to be seen as a person, not as a piggy bank or a burden or a problem to be managed. I need to know that the sacrifices I made for my family were worth something, even if my son forgot that for a while. And now, for the first time in years, I have all of those things. The road to get here was painful. There were moments when I wanted to give up, to give in, to let Brandon have whatever he wanted, just to make the conflict stop. But giving in would not have helped him. It would have destroyed both of us. Sometimes the hardest thing you can do for someone you love is say no. No, you cannot have my money. No, you cannot control my life. No, I will not let you treat me like I do not matter. Sometimes saying no is the greatest act of love there is. I do not know what the future holds. Brandon and I are still rebuilding our relationship. There are good days and bad days. There are moments when I see glimpses of the man he could become, and moments when I see shadows of the man he used to be. But we are trying, both of us. That is more than I could have said a year ago. Margaret used to tell me that family is not about blood. It is about the people who show up, the people who care, the people who are there when it matters. By that definition, Megan has always been my family. Brandon is learning how to be. And me, I am learning that it is never too late to start over. It is never too late to demand better. It is never too late to take back your life from the people who thought they owned it. My son said, I did not need anything. But what he really meant was that he needed everything I had, and he thought he deserved it. He was wrong, and now he knows it. That is my story. Thank you for listening. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? Tell me about it in the comments below. I read every single one, and if this story touched you in any way, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Family is complicated. Love is complicated. But you are never too old, and it is never too late to stand up for yourself. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and may you always have the strength to know your worth, even when the people closest to you forget it. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.